The courtroom was tense, heavy with anticipation, the way it often is in small towns when something big is about to happen. Nobody spoke, but eyes darted from one corner to the other. In the middle of it all sat a young girl, barely 9 years old, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze down, almost as if trying to disappear into her oversized coat. Her name was Emily Carter, and next to her, sitting attentively, was her dog, Scout, a sandy-furred golden retriever with eyes full of loyalty and something more. Understanding. You could tell just by looking at him this dog knew things. He sensed more than people did. Judge Mason Holloway, an older man with a stern brow but kind eyes, shuffled his papers and cleared his throat. "This hearing is now in session," he announced. His voice echoed through the courtroom like a soft hammer. Emily didn't look up. But Scout? Scout shifted closer to her, his body pressed gently against her leg. It was like a reminder, you're not alone. A few rows back, the room was packed. Neighbors, reporters, social workers, and even strangers who'd heard whispers about the girl with the dog who saw everything. You see, this wasn't just any custody case. It was the kind of case that breaks through the noise because it wasn't just about guardianship, it was about survival, about truth. A month ago, Emily had been found wandering near a gas station off Route 19, holding tightly to Scout's leash. Her clothes were torn, her knees scraped, and her lips pressed in a way that told you she wasn't ready to talk. But the dog wouldn't leave her side, not for 1 second. Officer Janelle Brooks, who first found her, had said, "I tried to separate them to get her checked out at the hospital, and the dog growled, real low, protective, like he knew we were strangers." From that day forward, Scout and Emily had become the subject of headlines and hush-toned conversations. Who was she running from? What had she seen? Why wouldn't she speak? They placed Emily in temporary foster care with a woman named Teresa Nolan, a retired schoolteacher with silver hair and a heart big enough to take in all the broken pieces. She wouldn't eat, Teresa had told the court social worker, until I let Scout into the kitchen. He'd sit by her, nudge her bowl, and only then would she pick up her spoon. Emily didn't talk, but she did communicate with Scout. A nudge here, a whisper there, a finger brushed against his paw. Small signals, silent but clear, and always, Scout responded as if he knew exactly what to do. Today, that unspoken bond was about to become everything. In the courtroom, a tall man with polished shoes and a sharp suit stood up. Richard Daniels, the defense attorney for the man seeking custody, Gregory Hale, Emily's biological uncle. Hale was a factory supervisor who had recently shown up after years away, claiming he could provide stability for the girl. But Teresa and others weren't so sure. "Mr. Hale," Judge Holloway began, "you say you've only recently learned about your niece's situation. Why do you believe she should be placed in your care now?" Hale stood. His tone was smooth. "Practiced. She's family, Your Honor. I didn't know my brother passed until weeks ago. When I found out Emily was in the system, I knew I had to step in. Blood is blood." He glanced at Emily. She didn't return the look. Scout, however, growled, just once, a low, barely there sound, but enough that everyone heard. "Control that animal," Daniels snapped. Judge Holloway raised a hand. "Let the record show the animal is a certified emotional support animal assigned to the minor." Scout sat again, his eyes fixed on Hale. Then something happened. Teresa Nolan walked forward. "Your Honor," she said gently, "I understand Emily hasn't spoken, but she has communicated. With Scout, we've learned some of her signals. She can say yes, no, danger, and safe. If you'll allow it, I think she's ready to show you." There was a pause, a heavy pause. The courtroom buzzed. This was unprecedented. Judge Holloway nodded. "Proceed." Teresa knelt beside Emily. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "can you show us how you say something safe?" Emily glanced up briefly, just a flicker of her eyes, then slowly she tapped Scout behind his ear twice. Scout responded by wagging his tail and laying down. "And danger?" Teresa asked, almost holding her breath. Emily shifted. She placed her palm over Scout's snout, then lifted it. Scout growled. It wasn't loud, it wasn't wild, but it was clear, controlled, intentional. The room fell silent again. Judge Holloway leaned forward. "Miss Carter, Emily, I need to ask you something. It's very important." He motioned to Hale. "Is this man safe or danger?" Emily looked at Scout. Her eyes filled just slightly. Then she reached over and placed her hand over Scout's snout, then lifted it. Scout growled, gasps. A woman in the back started crying softly. Hale stood up. "This is a joke. You're letting a dog decide the fate of a child?" Judge Holloway's gavel came down hard. "Sit down." The judge turned back to Emily. "And me, sweetheart? Am I safe?" Emily's fingers gently tapped behind Scout's ear twice. Tail wag. The courtroom softened. Teresa was crying now. Quietly, but clearly, Scout remained by Emily's side, calm as ever. The protector, the interpreter. That moment changed everything. The judge recessed. Investigators reopened files. And by the time the hearing resumed a week later, new information had surfaced. Evidence that Gregory Hale had been investigated years ago for neglect and violent behavior. Charges dropped due to lack of evidence. But now, Emily had spoken in the only way she could, and that was enough. The media picked up the story almost instantly. "Girl communicates truth through her dog," read one headline. "Justice heard through a wag and a growl," another. But behind the headlines was still just Emily, a quiet, wounded soul trying to find her way in a world that hadn't been kind to her. And beside her was Scout, the one soul who never left. As the courtroom began preparing for the next phase of the custody case, Judge Holloway called in Dr. Leslie Rowan, a child psychologist. With over 20 years of trauma experience, she had been observing Emily over the past week. "She's not mute," Dr. Rowan explained during a private briefing with the court, "but she's chosen silence. It's her shield. Her language is Scout. And frankly, he's one of the best therapeutic aides I've ever seen." The judge nodded, hands clasped. "She trusts the dog more than any person," she added. "That tells me everything I need to know." Back in Teresa Nolan's home, Emily was slowly beginning to open up, just a little. She still hadn't spoken a word, but she had begun to hum. Softly, almost like music was her way of telling. The world she still had beauty inside her. One night, Teresa was cleaning up after dinner when she heard it. Emily sitting on the couch with Scout, her small hand gently stroking his ears, a quiet melody escaping her lips. It wasn't loud, but it was there. Hope, in the form of a tune. Teresa stopped in the doorway, hand still holding a dish towel. "You know," she said softly, "that sounds like a song my mother used to sing, about light in the dark." Emily didn't look up, but she hummed, just a little louder. Meanwhile, things were shifting in court. Investigators uncovered phone records, witness statements, and even an old journal belonging to Emily's mother that hinted at past fears regarding Gregory Hale. She wrote, "If anything happens to me, I pray Emily stays far from my brother. He's got a temper you can't leash." That line hit everyone hard. And it changed everything. The state revoked Hale's custody request. But still, there was one more matter to resolve. Who would care for Emily permanently? Teresa had volunteered. But there was a process, interviews, legal proceedings, and through it all, Emily remained at the center of a quiet storm, Scout always by her side. Then one day, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Rowan was visiting, sitting on the porch with Emily and Scout. She had brought a notebook and was showing Emily how to draw feelings using shapes and colors. "This circle," she said, "is for safety. Blue, calm." Emily nodded, picking up a crayon. Dr. Rowan smiled. "And if you were to draw me, what color would I be?" Emily looked up, then at Scout. Without a word, she tapped Scout gently behind the ear twice. The tail wagged. "Blue." calm. Dr. Rowan smiled again, but this time with tears in her eyes. You've just said more than most adults ever do. A week later, another hearing was scheduled. This one quieter, more intimate. It was about where Emily would live, who would be her guardian, who would keep her safe. Judge Holloway looked tired but steady as ever. The courtroom was half full, fewer reporters now, just the people who mattered. Teresa sat beside Emily, holding her hand. Scout was there too, of course, wearing a service vest now, freshly approved. Miss Nolan, the judge began, you've offered to take permanent custody of Emily. Why? Teresa stood. Because I love her. Because she's a brave, bright, little girl who deserves to feel safe every day. And because she already feels like my daughter. The judge nodded. And Emily, he said gently, do you want to live with Miss Nolan? Emily didn't move at first, but then, slowly, she reached over, placed her hand on Scout's snout, and tapped behind his ear twice. Tail wag. Yes. Teresa squeezed her hand. The courtroom held its breath again. But Emily wasn't finished. She leaned forward, lips close to Scout's ear. And then, her voice, tiny, trembling, but real. I want to stay. The room froze. A whisper of sound carried more weight than 1,000 shouts. Even Judge Holloway paused, glasses halfway off. You do? He said softly. Emily nodded. With her. With Scout. That was the moment, not because she spoke, but because she chose to. Her silence had been her safety, her voice, her victory. Judge Holloway wiped at his eyes and straightened his papers. Let the record show. The child has expressed her will, and this court will honor it. That afternoon, they walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight. Emily, Teresa, and Scout photographers stood behind ropes, cameras clicking, reporters trying not to shout. But Emily didn't flinch. She looked up at Teresa. Can we go home now? Teresa smiled. Yes, sweetheart. We're going home. As they walked toward the car, Scout's tail wagged the whole way, and in the crowd, somewhere in the noise, someone whispered, that dog didn't just protect her. He helped her speak. They were right. Scout wasn't just a pet. He was her translator, her shield, her family. Months passed. The leaves turned gold and rust across the trees in upstate New York, and the air began to carry the crisp scent of early fall. Emily Carter was settling into something she never really had before, a normal life. But normal for Emily still meant a dog by her side always. Scout had become more than a support animal. He was a lifeline, and in the halls of her new elementary school, he was also a quiet legend. Kids whispered stories. He understands her, they'd say. She tells him stuff, and he just knows what to do. It wasn't magic. It was trust. Emily had started talking more now, just a little, in safe places, around safe people, in whispers at bedtime with Teresa, short answers in class, a shy thank you to the lunch lady. Always with Scout there, resting under her desk or curled at her feet during story time. At therapy, Dr. Rowan watched her transform from a girl with silence like armor into one who could sketch her dreams in crayons and speak when it mattered. But healing, as they say, isn't a straight line. One Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. Teresa opened it to find Officer Janelle Brooks on the porch. Sorry to drop by like this, she said, hat in hand. But we got a letter addressed to Emily. Came through the department, anonymous. Thought you should see it. Teresa took it cautiously. Thank you, Janelle. When she opened it, her heart sank. Inside was a short note printed in shaky handwriting. You think you're safe, but you're not. She belongs with her blood. No name, no return address. But the tone was unmistakable. It had to be Gregory Hale. Teresa didn't tell Emily right away. She placed the letter in a drawer, called Judge Holloway, and filed for an immediate restraining order. But that night, Scout was uneasy. He paced. He growled at shadows in the hallway. And when Emily had nightmares, he jumped into her bed and rested his head on her chest until her breathing slowed. The next morning, Emily asked, "Is someone coming for me?" Teresa hesitated. "Why would you think that?" "Scout knows," she whispered. He felt it. Teresa pulled her close. "No one's taking you from me, honey. No one." A few days later, something incredible happened. Emily's school was holding its annual Community Heroes Day. Parents were invited to talk about their jobs. Firefighters brought their trucks, nurses showed stethoscopes, officers brought K9 units, and then Emily stood up. "I want to share my hero," she said, voice small but steady. She walked up to the front of the gym with Scout. He's not a police dog, not a therapy dog, not trained to sniff anything but fear, but he saved me. The room went quiet. Emily looked around. When I couldn't talk, he listened. When I couldn't move, he stayed. He didn't need me to be loud or brave, just real. Her teacher wiped her eyes. Someone in the back sniffled. Emily knelt next to Scout and smiled. "My name is Emily. I have a story, and this is the one who helped me tell it." The applause lasted longer than any part of the assembly. Later that evening, Teresa found her on the back porch, Scout curled at her side as the sun dipped behind the trees. "I'm proud of you," Teresa said, sitting down. Emily leaned into her. "I think I want to write a book about Scout, about what happened. I think the world needs that story." But the world wasn't done with her story just yet. About a month later, Hale violated the restraining order. Police picked him up lurking near the school grounds. He had shaved, worn a hoodie, tried to blend in, but Scout had sensed him long before anyone else did. He barked until staff came running. When the officers arrived, Hale screamed, "She's mine! She's mine!" He was arrested immediately, and this time the court moved fast. Hale's custody rights were officially terminated, permanently. Emily wasn't told all the details, but she knew Scout had kept her safe again. And somehow, that made her feel stronger. "I want to be like him," she told Teresa later. "Kind? Loyal? No. Brave." Teresa kissed her forehead. "You already are." That winter, Emily and Scout took part in a children's reading program at the local library. Scout wore a bandana that read, "Read with me," and children lined up to sit beside him while Emily read stories out loud. One afternoon, a little boy who had never spoken much leaned in and whispered, "He likes it when you use the silly voices." Emily laughed. So did the boy. Scout wagged his tail. By spring, Emily had written a full children's book titled Scout Knows, a gentle story about a girl who couldn't speak and the dog who understood everything she never said. It was illustrated with crayon-style sketches and filled with quiet magic. The local paper ran a story. Then a national publisher called. Then morning news shows wanted to hear from the girl who spoke through her dog. But Emily wasn't interested in being famous. She just wanted other kids to know, even if you don't know how to say it, your truth still matters. That summer, on the anniversary of the courtroom decision, the town held a small gathering at the park. Judge Holloway gave a speech. Dr. Rowan read a passage from Emily's book. Officer Brooks brought Scout a Medal of Honor from the department, engraved with, "For loyalty beyond words." And Emily, now 10, stood at the podium. She didn't have notes. She didn't need them. "I used to think I had to be quiet to be safe. But now I know. My voice is strong." And Scout showed me that. Every bark, every growl, every wag was his way of saying, "I got you." And he always did. She smiled down at him. "And now I've got me too." Years passed. Seasons shifted, and the story of Emily Carter and Scout became something more than a news headline. It became a legend. Emily was now in high school, a quiet but confident young woman, her voice steady, her eyes sharp. She no longer walked in the shadows of her past. She walked with purpose. And always beside her was Scout. Older now, graying at the muzzle, but no less proud, no less loyal. They had grown together, aged together. Where Emily once needed Scout to speak for her, now she spoke for him. One morning, Teresa found her sitting on the porch with a laptop. College essay? She asked, handing her a cup of tea. Emily nodded. The prompt is about a defining moment. I'm writing about the first time Scout barked in court. Teresa smiled. That bark changed everything. It saved my life. Scout was slowing down, though, his hips stiff, his eyes cloudy in the mornings. And one afternoon, after a short walk, he paused at the porch steps and didn't move. Emily knelt beside him, whispering into his fur. It's okay, boy. We can rest now. She carried him inside, laid him on a soft bed, called the vet. Teresa stayed close, holding her hand, and Emily, holding his paw, sang the same soft tune she'd once hummed when she couldn't speak at all. Scout passed peacefully, surrounded by love. His service vest was folded and placed beside him, and the medal from the police department lay gently across his chest. The next day, the town held a vigil. Candles flickered along the courthouse steps. Kids brought drawings. Some brought stuffed animals. Others simply cried. Judge Holloway sent a letter. Dr. Rowan showed up in person, but it was Emily who stood before the crowd, Scout's collar in hand, and told his story. He never needed words. He just needed to be near. He taught me to trust, again, to be brave. He was more than a dog. He was the first soul I ever felt completely safe with. A reporter asked if she planned to get another dog. Emily shook her head. There'll never be another Scout. But one day I hope to help other kids the way he helped me. 2 years later, she did just that. Emily started a nonprofit called Scout's Voice, dedicated to pairing trauma survivors, especially children, with service animals. The mission was simple: to help others speak without fear, just as she had learned. She partnered with schools, courts, and therapists. She trained volunteers. She gave speeches, real, powerful speeches, to thousands of people across the country, and every time she stepped on stage, she wore Scout's old bandana tucked into her pocket. Her book was now in its 5th printing. And a second was on the way: The Girl Who Found Her Voice. One crisp autumn evening, she returned to the courthouse where it all began. The courtroom looked smaller now, the benches less intimidating, the memories less sharp. Judge Holloway had retired, but he'd returned for that one evening. He shook her hand. I never told you, he said quietly. But that day, when you finally spoke, I had to hold back everything just to finish the ruling. Emily smiled. It was the first time I believed I had power. You always did, he said. You just needed someone to remind you. She left the courthouse that night and stood outside under a sky full of stars. And she whispered, Thank you, Scout. As if on cue, a breeze stirred the leaves around her feet. Back home, photos of Scout filled a wall in Teresa's living room. Emily often stood there, tracing one picture in particular: Scout sitting tall in the witness stand, tongue out, tail curled around his paws. Below it, engraved on a plaque, were words Emily had written. He listened when no one else did. He stayed when everyone else left. He spoke when I couldn't. He gave me back my voice. In time, Emily started mentoring kids herself. One, a little boy named Milo, reminded her of herself. Shy, withdrawn, afraid of people. He didn't speak much, but he drew all the time. Trees, dogs, doors without handles. She brought him a golden retriever named June, trained by Scout's Voice. Milo didn't say anything the first day, but on the second he smiled. On the third he laughed, and by the end of the month he whispered to June, You're my best friend. Emily sat nearby, watching. Scout, she whispered under her breath, your voice is still out there. Kersa eventually passed away quietly in her sleep, having lived a full life, having given her heart to a little girl who needed it more than anything. At the funeral, Emily spoke. Calm, clear, strong. She saved me. After Scout found me. She gave me a home after he gave me hope. Everything I am today is because someone opened her door and a dog opened my heart, And when they buried Teresa beside a tall oak tree, Emily placed Scout's bandana in her hands. "Take care of him for me," she said. Years later, standing at the edge of a field with the sun setting behind her, Emily Carter now ran a sanctuary, filled with service dogs in training. Children played in the background. Laughter filled the air, and on her wrist she wore a small bracelet engraved with two simple words: "Scout knows," because he always had.